Hello, I am Marley Preston, here today to talk to you about all the things that you are wrong about. Today's guests include, from the depths of obscurity, Christopher Bigford, and former feminist Willow Vanhelsing. You are on the wrong side of history. Hello, I am Marley Preston, and you are listening to The Wrong Side of History. Today we're going to talk about a subject that is very annoying to me, and I think all of the guests here today. We're going to talk about modern feminism. The thing that annoys me about modern feminism is actually that it pales in comparison to first wave feminism. The women got the vote, they got the right to own property, and they got the right to have an abortion with the second wave, I believe it is. And now it doesn't seem to me to be about female and male equality, but more about female supremacy. Now, as a modern feminist, or a former modern feminist, Willow Vanhelsing has, I'm just going to call you Willow if that's okay.
Sure.
It's much easier. You have a unique perspective on this. Where is it that you think the modern feminists have gone too far?
Oh dear. Okay. Well, firstly, I'd like to address that in the first wave and second wave of feminism, it was still necessary for different reasons, but I think that a big reason that it's become what it is now, which is certainly not for equality, is because women got the rights that they were deprived of and ran out of things to complain about. And I think that a lot of the pioneers of the women's rights movement would be ashamed of what feminism has become.
Do you think that might be because they've gone from, like, the right to vote and own property to, like, man-spreading?
Definitely.
And the male gaze?
Certainly. One of my biggest issues is how loosely the term rape is thrown around, and this is an instance of where I feel like the pioneers of the women's rights movement would be absolutely appalled, disgusted. First of all, the term rape is used so loosely and thrown around like it's nothing that it takes away from the vulgar reality of actual rape. I don't understand how a woman can say that she is raped by the way that someone is looking at her or greeting her.
Yeah, we both watched a video together. It was, I think the title was "My Family Raped Me," but it was really just a series of metaphors, and they were loosely fit, like horribly non-fitting metaphors for rape. It's like, she says, I was raped when my mother called some girl a slut. I was raped when, what was it? I was raped when my brother picked on some girl who was not in the family, something like that.
Right, and when I was raped when I watched my father hit my mother or something like that, which are all issues not to be ignored, but it is also nothing that should be compared to or even talked about in the same regard as rape.
Now, I don't want to regulate art or anything, but I think these things are pale comparisons to rape. I think that there could be metaphors made to rape that aren't actual literal rape. I think that you could say that the Nazis raped the Jews with the Holocaust. I mean, that would be a more analogous rape scenario, don't you think?
Certainly, certainly, and I get the whole metaphorical context, and I get all of that.
It's just too watered out. You know what I mean? It's too loose. It's too everyday. It's like you don't say I was raped because I was annoyed. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And like I said, it takes away from the vulgar reality of actual rape. And I don't think that these feminists are aware of exactly what they're doing. And it's this, we've turned into a society that caters to victims, and the victim role is not only encouraged but endorsed and supported, and your words, pussification.
I think that was actually George Carlin, but yeah.
Okay, well, you've mentioned the pussification of I don't know,
Just America. I think it starts with America's
Western
youth,
society.
but yeah, Western society.
right. And I find it so off-putting, like, just nauseating when I see this, and how overused the term is.
Well, my problem with that is that what about all the people that regret having sex with someone? You can meet someone, you like them, you have sex with them, and the next day, because you wish you hadn't, it becomes rape. And I think what this does is, for one, is it makes guys afraid, because it's generally men that this happens to, because men don't turn around and say I was raped, because, well, we rarely feel shameful about this. But, about being with someone we just met.
What do you mean, like, rarely feel shamed about being raped, or rarely feel shamed about...
About hooking up with someone, a woman can go to a bar, as an example, meet a guy, go sleep with them, and then the next day wish they hadn't done it, and even though it was consensual at the time, it all of a sudden becomes rape, which is actually really, really awful behavior. Whereas a guy, in most cases, we don't regret just meeting somebody at a bar. We're cool with that, we went out, we got laid, it was all good. But, so it's very rare for a man to say a woman raped her in those situations, but it does tend to be women that do that.
But you feel maybe, do you think that this extends to marriage? Because I think it probably does, in the sense that you get fucked over in court with, with a rape charge, you're basically guilty till proven innocent, and it takes a lot to prove yourself innocent. But also, if you get married to somebody... they take half of the shit you earned, and they take the kids that you may have loved and everything. So, do you think that may be a deterrent for people, for men specifically? Like, women bitch all the time about, because women's primary objective usually, historically, has been to get married. But I think that the feminists are actually ruining romance and marriage. Don't you think too?
Well, absolutely. But I do want to back up to something you said here just a second ago. You were saying that when we're basically guilty until proven innocent, but the problem with that is, even when we're proven innocent, quite often we're still proven guilty. Just the accusation alone is enough to permanently scar someone's, everything.
Yeah, the reputation.
Right. And that's why it disgusts me how accepted it has become for people, feminists and men who are feminists, who say that if a girl, I'm going back to what you were saying earlier, if a girl...
Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
If a girl gets drunk and goes to a bar and then makes the decision, under the influence or not, makes the decision to hook up with a guy, and then later regrets it, and then they consider it rape. And a lot of people are now on board with that, accepting, saying that that is rape, and that is disgusting. And I am a former feminist, and now I consider myself a men's rights activist, because I feel like men need to men need it more than women do at this point of where we are, because men get demonized and victimized and have all these terrible things happen to them because of this whole thing that I don't...
The system that basically was set up, like, from the 60s generation, the boomers, right?
Right. But how is it rape? Like, a woman makes a stupid decision, and then that decision is then demonized.
Well, maybe she was drunk, but then if a man is drunk and the woman is not, that's not considered rape.
Right. And how come we can't just take responsibility for our own actions rather than, it boils my blood blaming these. There's so many men doing jail time, and we can talk about how men get harsher sentences than women for the same crimes, because that's a fucking fact. But it does not sit well with me, and I don't understand how society is just accepting the term rape, and
Well, yeah, there's a lot of facts about the male and female ratio of bad things happening to them. I mean, like, naturally, I think this is a thing with men and women, that women think that bad things are going to happen to them more than men do. Men are very sure of themselves in comparison, but men get killed in crimes more. They get assaulted more. Rape is about even, actually, when you factor in going to prison and jail and everything. But one of the things I want to get back to Chris on was the fact that the deterrent, not only to have sex, but the deterrent to get married, which is the thing that women bitch about a lot. But the women should be bitching at feminists, because feminism and the feminist lobby has actually ruined marriage and ruined romance, indeed. Because men don't want to get married anymore. But I think there's so much more risk for a man to get married than there is for a woman to get married. Because you can lose your kids, you can lose half of what you had previously possessed. And, I think maybe children falls into that more. I never had a kid, so I wouldn't know. But maybe you might want to say a thing or two about that, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that does happen, and it's just one more. That's true. One more reason. I mean, I can't get behind this men going their own way thing, but just because I still am traditional and believe in pair bonding.
No, but you can understand where they're coming from, right?
Well, that's actually what I'm saying. Like, it's a lot safer. I mean, the reality of it is it's getting more and more difficult to date women in general. You never know what's the right thing to do or what's the wrong thing. And yeah, absolute worst case scenario, somehow it all turns into rape, even if it wasn't. I mean, it's just an astonishing thing that people are okay with this. It just blows my mind.
Well, but yet you have told me in previous conversations that marriage is not off the table for you. Why is that?
Well, because a lot of factors. I mean, I'm still was raised that is our goal as a man. It's ingrained into me, and while I already have a child, and of course he brings me great comfort to know he's out there, even if he is with his mother, the devil. It's still someday I hope that will that he'll be old enough that we can get through all this nonsense. But the thing is I still believe that it's possible for someone to find someone and spend their life with and be happy. I mean, obviously you're never going to be happy 100% of the time, but, if you can find someone that'll take and go through the good and the bad with you, then why not?
Well, the thing that sort of grabs me is I don't think that you need marriage to prove to yourself or other people that you love another person. And I think that the beautiful thing about staying together and not being married is the fact that if you are married, it's very hard to leave. But if you're not married, it's very easy to leave. So if you're not married and you're together, you kind of know that the person wants to be with you in a way, because it would be so easy to leave, as where with marriage, it would not.
Right. I have a unique perspective in this because I reject at this point, I've rejected the idea of falling in love, and I think we're conditioned to believe that that's a primary purpose in life, is to fall in love and perhaps have children and what have you. But and that's just not for me, and that's not what I feel like I was put on this earth for. But to go back to what you were saying, yes, I think that it has stuck in people's heads that even though marriage has become like marriage itself is more like a formality, what takes away from staying loyal in a relationship and giving everything in a relationship? What does marriage have to do with any of that? Less likely to walk away once you're married. Why can't
Well,
it?
this is more likely to be trapped.
Right. Right.
And then you don't know if the person really loves you because it's just really hard to leave. And then you have people stuck in loveless marriages. Especially, I think nowadays it would be with men because they don't want half their shit taken away.
Right.
And they don't want their kids taken away.
It changes the dynamic of things, and any relationship should be based on trust. And if you
have a contract with somebody that's supposed to be some sort of love/contract thing, how can you trust them when they have like a legal entity on their side? When they could attack you with a lawyer, it's very hard to trust somebody.
Indeed.
And also, I'd like to address the whole success amongst women and men. Women in the United States commit suicide less than men do. Women nowadays are actually a higher percentage of college grads than men are. At what point will these feminists be happy? I mean, how far down? I mean, is it a matter of women rising or is it a matter of men falling? When will these feminists be satisfied?
They won't be, and that's what has brought feminism to what it is today. Women in Western society today we are no longer oppressed, and pretty much equality has been established in
A long time ago, but now it seems like female supremacy. Do you
Right,
think I'm
'cause-
like out on a fringe here?
No, they ran out of things to complain about, and now are making up injustices because there's no need for feminism anymore. Not here, not now. There isn't. So these whiny feminists are looking for things to continue something that I think we could all agree. I mean, we've come pretty fucking far.
Well, I think they're worried about losing the podium because you know how we live in an ADD culture, and if you lose the podium at all, it seems like it's very hard to recapture it again. It's almost like you lose it forever with a ADD society. I don't want to get off on a tangent about that. I think that's a subject for another podcast, but that's certainly a factor. But there are a few things I actually think that feminists have a good point on. There's not a great many of them, but there are a few. I think that it's easier to take a man seriously when they're talking than it is to take a woman seriously. More particularly if this woman is very attractive, but I think part of that is that attractive women take advantage of how attractive they are, and they don't use their intellect, they use their charms and being attractive. So a lot of these sexy women wind up alone because they haven't honed their skills at being human. They've honed their skills at being sexy. And all women eventually wind up playing hacky sack with our tits. None of us are getting younger. We're all getting older, and with our age eventually becomes being less attractive. I'm wondering if Willow, particularly, has any thoughts on this. Do you?
I do, and I certainly hope it catches up with them. From my observations, there's two main categories of feminists that have used feminism as a safety net, and one of those groups are the people you're speaking of, that the women that are incredibly beautiful on the outside, we'll say that, and are used to having everything handed to them because
And
of
they're not
their
used to
beauty.
having anybody disagree with them.
Right. Right, and they use it to their advantage, and they take
Because
advantage.
the men want to get with them, and the women want them on their side because of the alpha female, and it all goes back to our bestial nature and blah blah blah.
Right, and then they take it to the next level, and they get offended when somebody says hello to them, or think that everybody in the world is hitting on them, and they're not prepared for logic in an argument.
Yeah, and it
And-
seems like the sex negative feminism comes from like attractive women, and the sex positive comes from like the ugly ones. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this one.
No, I think that that's a valid point, and that's something that a lot of the other side argues, is that a lot of women who are feminists, or we'll go specifically and say third wave feminists, are overweight and unattractive and used to rejection by men, and that's part of the reason that they hate men so much. And I don't know if this is true or not. This is just an
It's probably true with some of them and not true with others. Just
Right.
like, a demographic is very wide.
right. I'm not trying to clump everyone into one fucking category. I just want to acknowledge that their motives tend to be biased.
Well, I don't think the third wave feminism has actually been all unattractive fat women. I just think the ones who actually succeed with their propaganda are actually more attractive, because people want to see and listen to more attractive women. And as I said, more attractive women can exploit their, what they have to meet their goals. I mean, don't you think, like, Chris is a guy who likes women and everything? So, I mean, don't you think that, you've seen this and maybe you've done this yourself, but don't you think that more attractive women, like, maybe this is a good point, at least, like, one good point the feminists have is, like, more attractive women actually do have the world handed to them on the silver platter?
Well, I think that's always been the case. Obviously, men in general are going to go towards women they find attractive. It's a standard. I think the problem here with feminists are, well, it's not that they want to change the system so much deep down. Truly, I believe it's just they want to be the pretty girls. Because they're not looking for equality for people.
Well, I don't think they can really have that whole pretty girl thing unless they have it. That's good genetics. But I think that they want to have all the privileges that the pretty girl has. And
Right, well,
everybody
that's
talks
what I'm
about
saying.
white privilege, and they talk about cis privilege, and they talk about heterosexual privilege, but they don't talk about beautiful girl privilege.
Right, well, what I'm saying, and that's what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to say is when you come out of your house and your neighbor has a brand new Mercedes sitting in the driveway, it's not that you're angry at them for having it. You're angry because you don't have one. If someone said, oh, I'll either give you a Mercedes or take theirs away, you would say, I'll take the Mercedes. That's really all it is they don't have it and they want it. Because feminists aren't looking for equality. It's not about equality. I think that's quite evident. It's about superiority. Ultimately, that's all it is. Please chime in.
Yeah, I think that it started off as equality, and that's what it should have been all along. But once equality was achieved, it became a bitch fest, like a spoiled little fucking brat of like, more, I want more, I want more, of unreasonable things.
Well, I think that it has turned into a festival of unreason. But I think part of that has to do with the fact that men, if men really have anything to do with it, there's a lot of white knighting, and if you guys don't know what white knighting is, it's basically, and this is handed to the more pretty girls. It's like you will white knight them because you will shield them from the horror of being wrong, and you'll defend them against someone else who's making a good point because you want to get laid. And that is actually, the white knights are actually something I think the feminists should fight against, and I think some of them have, because I think that they believe that maybe there's no such thing as a good guy or a nice guy. Like they say nice guys finish last, but I've heard feminists go off on nice guys and say that there's no such thing as a nice guy and things like that. So, I mean, and you said Chris, you said you've been on a university. Do you have no experience with this?
Well, I mean, that's not what we were talking about when we were talking about schooling, but no, I mean, I don't know what to say. It's always that way, it seems. But as a guy, you know, one of the things that we have, one of the issues we have with feminists are, I truly believe we don't know what the hell to do next. You know, the things that you...
Is this an issue with just feminists, or is it women?
Well, I think the root of it is in feminism. And again, like old school feminism, I have no problems with equality. It's
like the first wave, like, you know, like the right to own
suffragettes.
property, the right to vote, and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. I think that I don't have a problem with, you know, all people being regarded
Well, voting
equally.
doesn't mean anything anyways.
Well,
but-
that's a whole nother subject, and one we will disagree on later. But no, I mean, you know, a guy holds a door, then he's a chauvinistic pig. I mean, it's just absurd.
Which is the exact opposite. I mean, I don't think that anybody thinks... Nobody who's rational would think that a man holds a door for a woman really believes that she's not capable of opening the door herself.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, would a guy think that if one guy holds the door for another guy? No, we just think, hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
think I can do it myself? Yeah.
Hell, absolutely. If anyone thought that, I'd actually have to slam the door on them if they said something like that to me, but...
Well, as a heterosexual, white, cis male, do you think that apart from the court systems, do you think, you said you don't agree, or not agree, but you don't identify with MGTOW, like the men going their own way, but you can probably relate to the men's rights forum, right? I mean, the forums and the platform. I mean, apart from the whole having your kids taken away in the marriage thing, is there anything else you'd like to say on the subject of men's rights? Like, any more problems you think men have that women don't?
Well, I think the thing about it is, I mean, the way things are going, at some point, we're going to have, like, the men's rights are going to have to start fighting to get back some of the rights. I mean, we're actually giving up more than we have.
Right, we're already there. We're already there to the point where men are at a place where they need to reclaim their rights. And that's the sad truth. I mean, a man can't even just spread his legs out on a bus or a subway without getting fucking bitched at by some feminist as if it's doing...
Mandatory ball squishing on subways. I also think that feminism stands in the way of self-growth and personal growth, because it shields women from reality, and it's the infantilization of women. Like, we treat women like they're children, which is supposed to be demeaning to them. I would think it would be demeaning to treat a woman like a child. I mean, if you say that a woman gets drunk and she's no longer responsible for her own actions, that's infantilizing them and making them less responsible for their own actions, which you would think a feminist would speak up against because it's demeaning to women, don't you think?
I agree.
But it's almost like these women, or these feminists, want to be treated like children, because children have a lot of privileges that adults don't have, but they also have no responsibility. So there's this whole thing where you don't have to take responsibility for your actions, but you have all these rights. So all the rights and none of the responsibilities to uphold these rights.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the whole rape thing. A lot of it is just failure to take responsibility for making stupid decisions.
Yeah, and having sex is something that you're supposed to be mature about, right?
Absolutely.
It seems to me that men have to be more responsible in Western culture than women do, and it's sort of this longing to go back to childhood. I mean, Chris, I mean, would you agree with that? If you don't agree with that, would you at least understand what I'm saying?
Well, I think that's a genuine problem when you tell women that they're capable of doing something when they don't have the skills, and you do TV shows where these women are just naturally awesome at something, whereas, like we were talking, who was it? Stefan, what's his name, was talking about that the other day with Star Wars.
Stefan Molyneux.
There you go. He was talking about that with Star Wars and how you've got this girl who has no real skills, but all of a sudden is like showing up these men who've been doing it all their lives. It's just unrealistic, and it sets unfair goals. You can't expect that you're going to be the best painter in the world just because you're a woman versus a man who's spent their entire life trying to do it. It's absurd, and I think it sets completely unrealistic goals. And honestly, feminists should do something about that, because this doesn't make them look good, it makes women look weak.
Do you think maybe this may tie a decent segue to women in STEM fields, like in the scientific arenas, is where a lot of feminists bitch about there are no women in the scientific fields, and these feminists say that it's because men discriminate against them, when it's really just the fact that women aren't interested in STEM fields.
And I absolutely agree with it. And I think that happens pretty commonly. Not that they're held back because they're women. It's just, I mean, the reality of it is, most of the time, men and women like different things. They're going to pick different areas of interest because you go to school.
They're wired differently.
Yeah, absolutely. They're wired differently. But you're going to pick different things that you like to do. Obviously, most men, and I'm not trying to say all men and all women are this way. I'm saying that while we're equal, there's no reason we can't be different. We can't find things that make us happy.
I don't think we are equal, personally.
Well, I don't agree. I mean, we're going to be equal in the sense that it'll balance out. There are certain things that women tend to be better at than men, and vice versa.
Well, certainly. I just don't think that equals equality. I mean, equality, 1 + 1 is 2, 1 is equal to 1, 2 is equal to 2, B is equal to B. They're not the same, so therefore they're not equal.
Yeah, but you can't put a number equation against everything. I mean, if you put a scale on everything, weightlifting, okay, being able to lift 100 pounds is a 3, being able to lift 200 pounds is a 2, and obviously you get the idea. And a woman can only lift 100 pounds, and a man can lift the 300 pounds. But then you're going to find other areas.
The point was proven it not, actually. Because I'm not only saying that men and women are not equal, I'm saying that people are not equal. The equality doesn't exist. I mean, perhaps I'm getting too philosophical here, but...
Well, the thing is I'm not saying people are equal in everything. It's about finding a balance.
Well, I mean, people like to reference equality, human equality, in reference to the Bill of Rights, all men are created equal, when most of the Founding Fathers actually wanted to say that, or at least John Adams wanted to say that we're all created equally free, which is fine, and I think equal rights are good, but you can't expect equal results, because then that would mean that we're truly equal, and equality doesn't exist. We're not equal. People are smarter than other people are stronger than other people have more energy, more determined, so therefore, if people in general cannot be equal, then men and women certainly cannot be equal. They're wired differently. They can't be equal. As you said, men will be better at other things, and women will be better at other things, and that means that they're not equal.
Well, absolutely, but we haven't come up with a system to balance that. Someone could be, person A could be smarter than person B, but person B
There is no system that could balance that.
That's exactly what I just said. but the person B is stronger than person A physically.
Well, you said
Does
that there could be no, we couldn't have a system that balanced them because, but I'm saying that's because we can't balance them because people are just naturally not equal.
Now, see, I don't think that's actually true because people have other qualities. There's things you can't measure. It's as simple as that. What do you
Then
think,
how,
sir?
if you can't measure, then you can't say equal, because equal is a measurement.
I agree with what you're saying in the regard of equality isn't something that on a technicality can be achieved, but as far as equal rights go, like
Yeah, but that's what I said. Equal rights are good.
Right,
Trying to strive
but
for
that's-
human equality, that's dumb.
but that's what the divide is though between men and women in feminism and whatnot is the equal rights. That's like the main.
But would everybody agree that equal results don't follow, even if we had absolute equal rights? And we should have equal rights. But even if we did, everybody would think that we didn't, because people would just assume equal rights mean equal results. But it doesn't. Smarter people are going to wield better results, don't you think?
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment too. Absolutely. Well, not even smarter. I think something that gets confused is knowledge versus intelligence. People can be brilliant and not have knowledge, not have as much knowledge as someone who's mediocre and has been educated.
Well, I can agree in part with that, but I also think that if somebody's not knowledgeable and they're very smart, then you have to question whether they're very smart in the first place, because being smart is it's your ability to accumulate knowledge, and if you haven't accumulated any, then you have no drive to do so, and maybe you're not smart at all because you don't want to know.
That's actually
and
not
not
fair.
wanting to know is a disadvantage.
That's actually not a fair way to look at it at all. You've got someone from, well, just as an example, someone from the ghetto, okay? Very intelligent right from birth, doesn't have the opportunity to learn as much as someone else.
agree.
We have a world of knowledge at our fingertips. We have a compendium of almost all human knowledge.
We do.
Certainly, but there's
Most people do in the Western world.
right, but there are environmental factors that hinder people from even believing that they're smart. It's
Yeah, and I had those environmental factors.
And as did I.
Yeah, and that did not affect me. And some people deserve the whirlpool toilet that their life is going under. I mean, you can't blame influence on everything. I mean, the women, women and particularly feminists, often talk about how, well, women have been conditioned to believe this and believe that and do this and do that. Well, if you want to break the mold, then you have to break the conditioning. You have to be a fucking rebel, and you don't become a rebel by following your influences.
See, but that's an awfully convenient way to put it. If someone from a very poor background works 2 jobs, they're working 80 hours a week, when do they have time to seek knowledge outside of their work? I mean, they only
Be
need...
contemplative.
Right. There's no excuses for not building your knowledge. There's really no excuse for that.
Yeah, and actually, I think that if you're actually in a dumb job that doesn't require much thought, then that leaves a lot of room for thought while you're working. And I've known this because I've had dumb jobs. We've all had dumb jobs.
Being able to absorb information, it's not the same as having access to the compendium that is the internet. If you spend your entire, if you're 20 hours a day behind a machine, okay, you can think about a lot of stuff, because obviously it becomes repetition. But you're not in a position to feed that. And then you get home at night. And, some of us need to sleep. I mean, when it comes right down to it, there's a great deal of potential out there.
I think you're making a lot of excuses for people, because I had these dumb jobs and I was very tired, and my mind has made me think.
This isn't about thinking, though. This is about access to information.
Yeah, and if you have the drive, you will achieve this information. You don't have to go to college to have college-like information in your head. You can see college lectures online. You can become better spoken. I've worked on this. I'm an autodidact. I have no college education, and I'm the best spoken person that I fucking know.
I certainly agree with you on that one. I have a friend who is extremely intelligent, and he's like a brother to me, and he taught himself Latin, and he taught himself a lot of what he
It's
knows.
about breaking the mold.
Right. Absolutely.
And what feminists and other groups that say that they feel oppressed don't realize is that they have to break the mold, and that they're going to be, most of them are not going to be special. Why? Because most people are not special. Most people bear a grim resemblance to the minds of many other people. And this is because they don't dare to step outside the party line.
Well, the thing about that is, going back to what we were saying earlier, just as an example, I spent a lot of time in Paraguay, and I can tell you right now, nobody there has access to the internet. To make a phone call, you literally go to the phone company to make a call. There's no libraries. There's not access to any of that information, and we have many places in the U.S. that are the same way.
Okay, well, what about take Ben Franklin for an example? Ben Franklin didn't have the internet. Ben Franklin was not formally educated. He was an autodidact, and he learned himself.
Yes,
if one man,
to books.
if one man, yeah, we all have access to books.
No, we don't all
Yes,
have
we do.
access to books.
In the Western world, yes, we do. We have access to books. We have fucking libraries. And most of us actually have the internet.
Okay, so what you're saying is, going back to this person who's working even 60 hours a week to feed their family, they can't afford, and because there's many people like this, can't afford the internet in their home. Maybe they're lucky enough to be able to have it on their cell phone. It comes right down to it. If they're lucky, they get 6-8 hours sleep a night. So they're supposed to go out of their way, devote the little bit of time they have for sleep to go into the library?
I did.
And you were working 60 hours a week to feed your
I was
family?
working 40.
Okay, well, most people work 40. 40 is pretty standard.
Okay,
And did you
well
have,
then,
did you-
this
did-
does
wait,
not
wait, wait, wait.
explain. This does not explain the fact that people are not equal, and it's not because necessarily because of knowledge. It's a matter of being intelligent, and intelligence is the ability to accumulate knowledge, and a lot of that has to do with interest. But tying this back to feminism, there's all this victim shit going on. And I'm surprised that you're making excuses for these people.
Well, I'll gladly make excuses for people who legitimately are victims. The problem is it's become chic to be a victim now, which is absurd. But someone who's
I agree 100%.
someone who's genuinely been victimized and is damaged for it, they have total sympathy from me, absolutely.
Well, who's to tell who is truly damaged and who is not? When everybody, in a world where everybody wants to play the victim card, how do you know that? Shouldn't we all, if you want equality, you have to start with treating people with equality, and you have to treat everybody like adults. And maybe try to treat them all like they're intelligent adults, as opposed to taking into consideration their past. And if they're so easy to divulge their victimization, people who are truly victimized, and I've met people like this, they're not really quick. And they certainly don't feel like they're bragging about their fucking victim status. It's actually something that these people take shame in. And maybe there should be a healthy amount of shame, because people put themselves in these situations. Not all the time, but a lot of the times outside of childhood, they could have taken themselves out of this. And Willow has said a thing or two about this. Maybe you would like to reiterate that.
In that regard, I think that third wave feminism is weakening our society by enabling people to be coddled and take the victim role to the grave, rather than toughen up and be a warrior as a human being. And I think that people who've actually been victimized have an understanding of the consequences, which is why they're genuinely reluctant to divulge this information, because they don't want pity, and they understand that it's impossible to achieve an understanding from a unique perspective. People who have truly been victimized are aware that they will be judged, or that the situation itself there's no way that it can be accurately processed. And the people who brag about being victimized have not truly been victimized, and they are just, it's a slap in the face to the people who actually have been. And I wanted to talk for a second, something that just happened maybe like a few days ago. I saw this. A woman from the US went to South Africa for a rape awareness seminar. She's a feminist who traveled to do some seminar, and she took I don't know the whole story, but she was staying at a hostel, and her excuse was that the showers were cold at the hostel, and she met this guy, and I don't know the exact circumstances, but she took a shower with this guy because supposedly the water was cold at her hostel, which fucking makes no sense. Anyways, she was allegedly raped by this guy that she willingly took a shower with, and documented everything post rape, and documented a rape kit and her crying and all the posts and everything. And that screams that it's preemptive, and it's disgusting. But, good.
Well, it seems to me that a lot of the modern feminists, and this could carry over to people who are not necessarily in the feminist realm, but people nowadays, this current generation, gets off on being victimized. It's almost like this, it's like a rape fantasy written down and made real. It's like this, and right where they orgasm in their fantasy is when they have friends hugging them and crying on them, and it's like, oh, I wish I was there to save you. It's like, that's their orgasm. This victim mentality is their orgasm.
It's a taught behavior, and it's a learned behavior. People are taught to take pity on people who have unfortunate things happen to them, traumatic things, terrible things, horrible things. And then in that, people have been taught to maybe embellish or even romanticize
The victim role.
Yes, exactly. And it's this vicious cycle, this circle of like feeding this unhealthy behavior that our society is catering to it. Like I said before, the victim role is so it's handed back to you in like this, what I said earlier, like a warm blanket. Even therapists and human service workers, they will tell you it's not your fault and how much of a victim you are, and people just run with that. Once they're fed that information, it
traps them in that role.
Exactly, and
it makes them stay in that role, and it makes them repeat the trauma that has happened to them over and over and over again, because they learn nothing,
and it hinders them, and it hinders their growth. And this whole like trigger thing, like people have been taught, people who are truly been victimized have been taught about all these triggers and to avoid triggers. Why fucking avoid triggers? Why not face them?
Yeah, if you have a fear of heights, you have to climb Mount Everest.
Yes, desensitization works, but we're being taught to just run from
Go on
these
top
things.
of the Empire State Building.
Right. Running from reality is not going to change anything, and it's not going to help.
Running from
grow.
reality is not the cure for delusion. It's the cause of delusion.
Exactly.
It's the problem. It's the disease. And trigger warnings is something I want to talk about in another show. But in fact, it's all a part of this problem, is this romanticization of the victim role. What did we used to romanticize? We romanticized what was the most proud thing you could hold on high above yourself. The role of the hero used to be sacred. And in fact, I still find it sacred. The fucking hero. The hero takes upon himself the troubles of the world, and he is rewarded by the praises of others, not the pity. I mean, pity makes me, like, I've been through bad shit, just like anybody else. And if people pity me as a result of that, it almost makes me nauseous. And it's degrading.
It is degrading. A final point that I wanted to make about feminism, because there's just so many things, there's no way we could fit it all in. But I wanted to talk about the patriarchy, and that it's something that is no longer relevant in Western society because it no longer exists in Western society. It's relevant in that it's part of history, and it's a part of history that can teach us to not forget where we came from, just as we can appreciate that the Holocaust is a part of history that in itself laid the foundation for the changes made. So we can have gratitude for having come so far, and remorse for knowing that our forefathers didn't get to see the injustices put to rest. It's gratitude, and gratitude is something that I don't believe is in a modern feminist vocabulary.
And in the spirit of gratitude, I think that we should take a look at the men who have supported these women and allowed the death of their own dreams to a monotonous and laborious and tedious job that they've taken on to support their wife and family. And this is a track that's close to my heart. It's called Every Day My Dreams Will Fade.